When women believe that we can face the dragon alone, we are unfortunately misidentifying what a dragon is. You know, a dragon, you guys, is an apex predatory structure. It is a malevolent power. It is institutionalized violence. It can be ideological extremism. It can be war. It can be cartel architecture. It could be organized criminality. It could be state failure. And the new cultural catechism is simple. You don't win against a dragon by out-arguing it. You don't mobilize discourse against a dragon by increasing awareness. You confront a dragon. And only warriors with rival anatomical durability, rival aggression thresholds, and rival motivational architecture can effectively restrain extreme expressions of masculine violence. It feels unfair. I know it sounds unfair, but I don't know what to say. It's just the way the world works. Even across cultural autopsy, even in the animal kingdom, this principle persists. Male-male competition emerges as the primary regulator against male aggression. Even the scriptures understood this intimately. When prophets rebuked kings, this is an instantiation of the sage restraining corruption. Yes, Deborah prophesies, but ultimately, Barak is the one who fights. Kings restrain tyrants, the warrior restrains predation. Warriors confront evil, and so the boundary between home and hell is maintained. Women may be the critical conscience of a civilization, but men are its shield. Remove that shield, and conscience becomes a casualty. Thus, Hebrews imagines the Messiah as both the logos, i.e., the sage, and the lion. This is the warrior. This truly is a delicate duality that I think, tragically, modernity has amputated. And truly, the beautiful part about this story is that, when Christ returns in Revelation, he doesn't return as a therapist, okay? He literally, the scriptures say explicitly, he returns as a rider on a white horse, judging and making war. This is in Revelation 19, verse 11, but unfortunately, modernity has attempted, and I think failed in a lot of ways, to retain the sage whilst exiling the warrior. And then, of course, we wonder, cluelessly, why it is that male violence proliferates unrestrained. Now, to dramatize these dynamics, I want to pull us to one of the most consequential mythographic texts in pre-modern Europe. And yes, I've spoken a lot about the fact that the original classics hold much more consequential moral weight, at least to me. They have not been sanitized. And yes, they are a lot more brutal. They're definitely not for children, but they're important. This is Basile's 1934 Sleeping Beauty. And the myth in particular unveils two primordial psychologies, okay? We're looking at untutored innocence. This is the immature feminine. And then we're also looking at the immature masculine. So, as the story goes, Talia's father hides her from danger, literally locks the young girl away, believing that ignorance is insulation, right? And he, in my opinion, commits the primordial parental error. To shield a child from every dragon is to ensure that she is devoured by the first one she meets. The ancient world knew that Herod's massacre of male infants upon Jesus Christ's birth illustrates this. Malevolence finds innocence anyway. You can delay confrontation, but not abolish it. And malevolence hunts the unprepared. So Talia, untouched by reality, she becomes the perfect prey. She pricks her finger, and obviously this is symbolic initiation into the world's moral gravity. And then, as we know, she collapses into consciousness. So, what happens? There's this wandering king, there's this wandering prince. He doesn't really have a mission, but he does. He's looking for the dragon, but he's wandering. That is the point, right? He discovers Talia, the sleeping princess's inert body, and you would think, hey, because you obviously know the sanitized version, the softer version, you would think, okay, he rescues her, right? No, not at all. No. So he violates her, to be explicit. And Talia awakens 9 months later in childbirth, literally 2 twins. She awakens when the twins, sun and moon, start suckling her finger and they dislodge the poisonous splinter. Birth awakens her, and so meaning returns through this imposed responsibility on the feminine. Eventually, the king returns to get his children, i.e. extensions of his legacy. And notice, by the way, the metaphysical symmetry happening here. Feminine awakening in this myth comes through traumatizing despair, pain and creation, and masculine consequence comes delayed, right, distorted, and morally disfigured. Remember, the way you deal with the dragon, the way you deal with injustice, the way you deal with some malevolent entity at the threshold of what it means for you to be alive betrays your relationship with meaning. The myth isn't expressly condoning violence. I think it is actually describing a metaphysical principle that the desire of men for legacy is not just cultural. It is actually intercivilizationally cosmic. It is inside you. And so when society removes legitimate channels, masculine instinct finds. In fact, it can create illegitimate ones, abusive ones. But I'm trying to say, and I'm not justifying this observed behavior, but it is a consistently observed behavior, is that if men are denied structured heroic responsibility, they will seek unstructured forms of dominance. And if the masculine cannot ascend responsibly, that is, if the masculine remains perpetually uninitiated by responsibility, essentially they remain dependents, right? They remain consumers, they remain children. This is like Peter Pan syndrome. Anyway, they become the wandering prince whose urges become a law unto themselves. And this is the psychological mechanism I identified in some other video. I can't remember which one, but I did. We have talked about this before. Extreme feminine contempt for masculine utility doesn't merely demoralize men, but it also does produce the perfect generative conditions for tyrants. And again, I'm not condoning I'm not condoning this behavior. What I am saying is this is what we observe. This is what we suffer for. And there must be, honestly, another way to cure this, to deal with this, because human social behavior, right, is governed by cost-benefit calculations that are both conscious and mimetic, right? That's imitative. When public affect towards masculine sacrificial behavior or labor is contemptuous, what happens is that the social return on costly male investments, i.e. time, risk, lifelong provision, is perceived as negative or null. Men in this climate then will take social cues, okay, who is esteemed, who is shamed, who is rewarded. They take observation on which behavior is rewarded or punished. Nietzsche in particular named the alchemy that results from suppressed injury as something he called resentiment, right? A moral inversion that converts impotence into moral superiority. And it's incredibly toxic because when a quote unquote, like when a good man, right, or it's even hard, it's even hard to define, but you get what I'm saying, okay? When a good man experiences continual contempt because those around him are making are making him suffer for their issues, for their abusive behaviors. The character arc of this good man is twofold, okay? Either he internalizes worthlessness, so he resigns into this shameful resignation, or he externalizes through bitter grandiosity. This is resentful assertion. Both are incredibly costly to civic life, because you see, repeated social humiliation that produces shame, which we know does psychodynamically narrow agency and increase withdrawal. And so, yes, shame-based withdrawal is not merely an individual pathology with men, and with men, it also manifests as an unwillingness to defend. This is the very disposition that makes a society secure. The wandering prince problem, as I illustrated in the story in The Smith, is a function of why resignation does, at its endpoint, produce predation. Where honored guardians retreat, a vacuum opens where usually two categories of men can then occupy the gap, right? The first type is the resigned, and the second type is the predatory. The resigned is the type that, retreats into private life, usually very socially anxious, very introverted. But yes, they retreat into private life and indulge some kind of destructive passivity. We're looking at consumerism, we're looking at addiction, and then on the predatory front, we have men who reinterpret social scarcity, particularly social scarcity on the relational front, as entitlement. And so they resort to expropriation, sexual, economic, or even violent. And the latter, you have to appreciate, are not weak in the traditional sense. They are often precisely the opposite. They are resolute enough to assert dominance by force or by social manipulation. This Yeah, this is where you see the proliferation of narcissists. They are the wandering prince with no purpose, with no direction, who seeks seizure because they feel that society has denied them covenant. Basile's Talia, the original Sleeping Beauty, I mean, really does illustrate this so well, and that's why I wanted to tell you the story. When protective structures fail, a male of predatory inclination will inevitably fill in the gap. They treat legacy as a prize, and they do end up internally normalizing domination. Now, for a brief, just a very brief second, guys, I want to talk about raising protests and raising awareness, okay? Movements of almost every strain and imagination, and why I've always refused to participate. Not because, by the way, I don't believe in the cause, but because for me, as a matter of principle, I refuse to be complicit in any ineffective performance that reflects my convictions on a passive scale, but assures no transformative affect to enforce my convictions, which, in my opinion, makes my convictions very useless. Very, it almost feels theatrical. It feels so, I don't want to use the word performative virtue, but it's very much adjacent to that. And I'm sick of that. To be honest, I'm so sick of that. Criminology and rational choice models show that behavior is essentially deterred only by credible costs, not expressions of social disapproval alone. We know that yes, a protest generates social pressure. A police arrest does impose some calculable cost. Serial predators respond directly to calculus. Likelihood of capture, right? Severity of sanction. Certainty of informal peer sanction. But do you know what I don't respond to? Like, ever, at all? Instagram carousels. Okay? Demonstrations, dramatic demonstrations of dissatisfaction. A 30-part TikTok series to warn women and expose, I don't know, like to expose some narcissistic guy who, I'm gonna get so irritated. Truly, guys, I get so irritated to certain embarrassment because it feels like, seriously, it feels like we've been collectively brainwashed to be as frustrated, as collectively ingratiated in our moral posturing, and as effectively ineffective at enacting transformative consequence on it. Yes, in the long term, whenever there's an injustice, whenever there is a sustained discrimination, we don't know how to deal with this. And if we do, and if we think we do, and then we're shocked when nothing changes. Serial predators, right? Serial abusers do not look with that. I don't know what people are thinking sometimes. I'm not trying to be offensive, but truly, this is the ineffectiveness of this. We know, guys, that serial abusers, serial offenders do not look with like convicting shame through their WhatsApp contact list and become impotently overwhelmed by the amount of purple they're seeing. Movements, yes, can raise awareness, they can shift norms, but they are, in my opinion, insufficient primary deterrents of the most dangerous actors. There is a reason that men respond to order enacted by other men. It is an anthropological constant. They also, importantly, hardly ever respond to demonstrations of contempt, and that essentially is what a protest is. When I go somewhere and I need my boundaries to be respected, right? I know as a woman, and I've experienced this directly as a woman, that there are two types of men. One feels entitled enough to my attention, to my not more than just actually my attention, to my, more than that. You know what I'm saying? But they feel entitled enough to it to just take it. And there are those who I appreciate will pursue my attention, pursue my regard within respectful margins, and they'll back off when I say no. The former, especially when I'm going out in public, is only ever deterred by other men or a gun. Like, really, I have to have something, or a knife. I have to have something like a weapon on me, because that is calculus with affect they should be afraid of. A predator, you guys, does not respond to my negotiation, to my insults, to my barbs, or even my screams. There is an anthropological and psychoanalytic science to competition, to war, and to value. And who how you obtain that value. This needs to seriously, I think, be understood by women who think protests, movements, etc. are effective in taming and punishing the worst of this world. Because the way the world works is that to get something done against a resistant group of men, you probably need somebody who actually has enough spine to enact that boundary. And I have to say that yes, and like some men were just not raised to develop that warrior spine. Some, unfortunately, and this really does sadden me. I don't think it's like completely extinct, but it's really sad. It's really sad. Some men are so soft and passive and resigned to certain shame and inactivity that they never learn that their essence actually represents a boundary. There's a reason I call my dad when I'm in serious, serious danger, because if you're a guy watching this, you as a masculine entity, you like your essence actually represents order. If that is, you decide to action on it. It is a threshold, and critically, like a father or the king on a chessboard, it is the final bound. It is the final line. And unfortunately, women, especially so immured women who have been like completely scaffolded and shielded from the worst of this world. I'm not saying that you must throw like your daughters into the deep end, but if girls who have been immured have this really soft, this dangerous understanding of what true evil is, what true malevolence is. But we do have this high capacity, this high potential to absorb the emotionalities of a crisis, especially when somebody's talking about their experiences, their trauma. We take that in. I mean, we feel what they are feeling. Women need to understand and be taught, I think, early what predation is, what evil is, what malevolence is. Because I mean, I'm yet to meet a woman to whom it doesn't come for. It will come for you. We need to be taught how to deal with it if or when it comes, because it exists. And if girls are not taught these principles, they will respond to violation of their boundaries without consequence that is actually taking long-term effect, right? We won't know what to do. We won't know how to say no. We won't know how to wake up. Then the other thing I also see happening is that when we are indeed confronted with violence, we're so aggrieved in whatever the unfairness was, whatever the injustice was, whatever it was that hurt us. We are so aggrieved to admit that we actually do need and want a rivaling potential to set a boundary against whatever hurt us, because now in our grief, we've demonized everything aggressively masculine. We think it has no utility in society. Predators prey on what is valuable, and yes, malevolence, dragons have an appetency for value. A woman's naturally nurturing capacities and a woman's naturally expressive capacities. I always tell girls, like, you don't have to minimize what you are feeling. And the strategy of the dragon is to introduce trauma into the woman's experience in order to disfigure those capacities, in order to disfigure the most beautiful capacities and potentials that the feminine has to offer. And once you disfigure those qualities, they become incredibly destructive. The myth is not prescribing morality. It is defining the trajectory of every fallen empire. Rome post-Republic, Weimar Germany, the late Ottoman decline, the collapse of the Aztec priest-warrior case, post-Soviet criminal syndicates, Rwandan militias. When men are denied honorable hierarchy, they do inevitably build dishonorable ones. Okay, almost done. Finally, and I'm so sorry guys, I did not expect this video to be this long, but hey, we got there, we tried. I just did want to say, when it comes to the end trajectories of masculine utility, it really does matter that we discuss that men do not thrive as indefinite consumers. The masculine psyche was never designed to be an indefinite consumer. That is the role of an infant. That is the role of a dependent. Consumerism, or rather indefinite consumption, is the posture of infants and those on those on their way out. When it comes to an empire, historically, a man has been stabilized on two arenas. Okay, we have the family, the axis of legacy, and then we have the community, right? This is the arena of usefulness. Remove both and he essentially becomes a vacuum with an appetite. If you are doing neither, trust and believe, because you're a human being, you're consuming something. You are consuming your mother's effort, okay, sitting there in a basement doing nothing. You are consuming you're consuming something to satisfy your sexual urges. There does persist an appetite that needs to be fed within you. And I say this, by the way, like if you're a guy watching this, I say this with every gentleness, every simple sympathy, because I know like it's tough, but also with a bit of forcefulness, right? There is no point in consuming the wisdom of modern sages, okay? You know who I'm talking about. You know the types of influences I'm talking about. There is no point in consuming their wisdoms if you have no trajectory of consequence to apply those wisdoms. What I've observed is that men without an orienting locus of identity, even beyond their social currency, beyond their hedonistic appetites, beyond their urges, and beyond women, they are the most unstable, because when any one of those pillars develops contempt for him, he has no access. He can't survive. He can't survive. And I also think that modern culture has committed a theological category error, assigning women the responsibility of conferring masculine significance. That's not our responsibility. It's not our role. It's and yes, like we can speak life, we can encourage, but we're not the reason you're alive.